By the end of this video, I promise you are going to know 30 different ways to fist somebody. Now that's getting cultured. Of course, we're diving into the monolithic, genre-defining, ultra-violent Fist of the North Star, one of the top-selling manga franchises of all time. No, seriously, it's like right below JoJo, and it's tied with Astro Boy. It's huge. Nearly every page of this is a Jackson Pollock of blood and guts erupting from people's bodies, like last night's Taco Bell and gin and tonic couldn't wait for the porcelain throne. NANI? Hey, bet you didn't expect me to show up with a mustache. I didn't either. Do you know how long it takes to grow one of these out? Seriously, like I'm not shaving that off. Anyway, besides looking amazing, I'm here specifically right now to not sell you something. This advice is free, my friends, and so is the solution. If you're watching this on a PC right now, there's like a 97% chance that you are using something that rhymes with Rugal Rome, and I was too for a super long time, but not anymore. And these are my words completely. That browser is broken and bloated. It is an absolute data hog that is slowing your computer down. I have a computer built for editing multi-hour long videos, and I have trouble with YouTube playback. Turns out it was my browser. My resting RAM is at 12%, it was my browser. And if you check your settings, it's probably going to be similar. So I have a free solution plus perks, but you gotta use my link in the description because we really have to pay our editors, please. Guys, I'm talking about Opera GX. It is a lightweight browser that offers a bunch of other crazy stuff on top of it. It is completely customizable, and I play enough video games where you can download skins that I know how much weebs love to customize. Now maybe you think modding a browser is complicated. Maybe you didn't grow up with MySpace like I did. Now with Opera GX, you got Opera GX mods. It's one click, you can basically change anything you want. We're talking background music, keyboard sounds, themes, color, wallpaper, and sidebar mod menus. This video you're watching is long AF, my friends. You want to do something else while this is going on? You want to still hear my sultry voice and see this beautiful face of mine while you tweet about how awesome Bonsai Pop is? You got a pop-out button for all of your videos right there. Just click that button, boom. You also got all your apps on the sidebar, my friends, even TikTok, while that lasts. So you want to use those, you can watch and browse at the same time. And maybe you're worried because the browser you've been using it forever. It's got 8,000 passwords that are in there that you don't remember. We all know you don't want to deal with reconfiguring your bank account password. Not to worry, Opera GX has an instant transmission import tool for all of your settings. You do a boop bop and everything's over to your new browser, which looks better, feels better, and more importantly, it is not going to be hogging all of that space on your PC, slowing down your games, slowing down your streams. The best thing is it's fun, it's free, and it's easy to use. All you gotta do to download Opera GX is click the link in our descriptions, probably in a pinned comment too, and join me in trashing your old web browser for the new, sleeker, slimmer Opera GX. Now on with the show. I'm gonna grow my beard out real quick though. While we're wading through this never-ending red river, I think it would be irresponsible of me to set you up for a narrative masterpiece. Fist of the North Star is one of the most influential manga ever created, but its exceptionalism isn't exactly built through obvious character development, or even the plot, really. Not to say those don't exist, but highlighting them over the insane art and over-the-top violence is like saying, dude, check out this white wall. Why are you looking at the Great Wave off Kanagawa? This entire wall is the exact same color of white. However, Kenshiro's story, of course, merits some attention. Besides the obvious get him from point A to point B so we can witness the next explosion of carnage, there is definitely some character development to take note of. And while it can be difficult to see when your main character is more stone-faced than an Easter Island head, the moments of clarity that define the sorrowful nature of the story are unbelievably heavy and impactful. And for a manga centered around people exploding via intense acupressure, the amount of sheer cry-guying in Fist of the North Star is unparalleled. Those moments of misery continuously connect to build an extremely sturdy foundation of what Fist of the North Star is driving at, which is finding strength in your pain, and then using that strength to make people explode. And when the story goes batshit crazy and your head starts spinning, it's those themes that continually ring true. So today we're not just going to explore the hyperviolence that changed media forever, but we're going to unearth more of those subtle emotional tinges that make all this fisting possible. And as an added bonus for the uninitiated and experienced fisters alike, we're going to drive that fist up into the guts of a story that is so bonkers, you're going to wonder if you're already dead too. This is the insane story of Fist of the North Star. Let's get into it. So Fist of the North Star is the first manga series that we've ever talked about that was specifically produced by two people. Generally, manga is written by one person, illustrated and inked by that same person, who rides the line between life and death in order to yeet out a chapter each week. If the manga becomes popular enough, generally they'll get assistance, which allows them to get 4 hours of sleep a night instead of 3. Now, Fist was written by the absolute infamous Bronson, also known as Sho Fumimura, also known as Yoshiyuki Okamura, because he's that cool. In fact, he's actually so cool he didn't give himself the name Bronson. It was given to him by coworkers at his first manga job because he reminded them of Charles Bronson, specifically for Bronson's role in Adieu Iami, which I probably pronounced horribly wrong, but I just French and me just don't work. So from that point on, he was Bronson, and you know, it's a lot like when Tyler saw Fight Club, and now everybody I know just refers to me as Brad Pitt. Now, I'm sure there's an amazing story of the light bulb moment where Bronson came up with the idea for Fist of the North Star, you know, written down in one of those obscure Japanese blogs that really can't be translated somewhere on the internet. But it doesn't matter. We all know Bronson saw Mad Max and he was like, what if that, but with Bruce Lee? And then it was so. And yeah, all he had to do was write the thing. And let's be real with ourselves, it's 95% concept, 5% getting to the point. I mean, I can do that. Anybody want to make a manga? I got ideas. Hit me up in the Patreon. I can't draw, but I can definitely tell you what to draw. And I think, as most of us know, Bronson is generally considered, you know, the Fist of the North Star guy. He made Fist of the North Star. However, it is my humble onion that Tetsuro Hara is the true hero of this story. I mean, homeboy invented what future man would come to know as Riz. Every page of this series is dripping with style and flair, and character design is on fleek, yo. The atmosphere is palpable and the action is perfect. Hara, in short, is a genius. Without his eye for perfect paneling and character design and outfit design and action that makes sense and isn't confusing in any way, Fist of the North Star likely would have died on the design table. Fate is a funny thing, and in 1983 the two got together and made history. 40 years later, after a long run of manga, a giant run of anime, multiple animated movies, live action attempts, and video games, Fist of the North Star is one of the best-selling manga franchises of all time and one of Japan's GOATs. In the year 1990X, the world was engulfed in the flames of nuclear war. Life as we knew it was all but extinct, yet humanity somehow survived. You ever feel like humanity is like the stain on the earth that just won't come out? Even nuclear bleach can't wash out evolved apes known as human beings. But this is what Fist of the North Star is known for, the setting. It's a barren, post-apocalyptic world. Dog eat dog, except there's no dogs. Sink or swim, except there's no water. It's a jungle out there, but yeah, you get it. Governments fell and the world was plunged into anarchy and chaos where the only rules come from a person's conscience. And turns out a lot of people didn't have those. Bands of raiders roam the wasteland, pillaging villages of what little food and water they have without any regard for the sanctity of life. Big, dumb, mohawked assholes without a sympathetic bone in their body kill others for fun. Okay, maybe one had a conscience, but it doesn't happen very often. On the horizon, a man clothed in a ragged poncho is snatched up in a Coyote and the Roadrunner-esque trap. He's too weary to struggle against the townsfolk that have trapped him and gets thrown in a jail cell with a scruffy kid. Here, we get to meet 3 of the primary characters. This is Kenshiro. He's a big boy that never learned how to express his emotions properly, but inside that hard exterior is a tickle-me Elmo of love. The scruffy blonde kid is Bat, and he's basically just comic relief until the second half of the story. And don't worry, we are going to get to that part where everything basically implodes on itself. And the little girl is Rin. She watched her parents get slaughtered and is mute from the trauma. Kenshiro, of course, fixes her with a little acupressure therapy, and she becomes a far more important character during the Insanity Chronicles in the second half. Side note, some people call her Lin instead of Rin. It's all English, it's supposed to be Rin, but I'm not going to say that every single time. And of course, it depends on the translation you're reading. I read the Signature Edition, and I highly recommend it. Tyler read the Ultimate Edition that came out between 2013 and 2014. Apparently, at the end of that edition, Hara Tetsuo shares that this edition has the corrections and changes he wanted to make earlier, but couldn't before. He calls her Rin, so I'm going to also because I don't feel like saying Rin every time I say her name. Anyway, these three characters all kind of make nice with each other, but then the dumb-haired dickheads ride up on motorcycles that also somehow survive nuclear fallout, and Kenshiro breaks through the jail bars to show the audience that he is a big, strong man. Rin literally threw you the cell keys. You didn't have to resort to property damage, my dude. No tact at all. But then Rin is taken hostage by the leader of the Side-Balding Anonymous Club, but Ken strikes him with like 30 different sign language punches, says the thing, and the guy explodes. And that's the end of the first chapter, and I mean, besides my doofy but incredibly accurate exposition, it does a perfect job of establishing some important points. First off, Ken has a conscience. He's not just a super strong dickhead like most of the people he comes across. I mean, he is super strong, but he also cares for people, and especially these kids. He helps them and thinks about how his actions will affect others, except of course when breaking jail bars. But the second thing that this chapter does is show the overall setting. There's weak people huddled in villages, barely surviving, and gangs of roid-raging NPCs that are happy to kill anyone and everyone unless Ken steps in. And the final important piece from this chapter is Bat's character, and he's kind of Ken's sidekick for a good bit of the beginning storyline, and honestly, I don't think this series would have survived along without him. He's kind of the shonen in the shonen. It's super fun to watch Ken kick ass, but when it comes to dialogue, he's not really big on it. You can't just be epic all the time, and Bronson probably realized that someone needed to have a personality to make up for Kenshiro's complete lack of one. That brings in some much needed levity, characterization, and dialogue until Ken finds other companions down the line. I'm not saying that Ken has zero personality, because he totally does. It's just doled out in very small pieces across the entire story. And when we do finally get some emotion from him, all he can do is show anger or sadness. But those two emotions are really all his character needs when we finally get his backstory. Speaking of backstory, all of Ken's initial fights are for information regarding the king, some dude who knows some powerful martial arts, which are usually called fists. So Kenshiro uses Hokuto Shinken, the fist of the North Star, but he'll fight dozens of different fists during his journey. And you might be proficient in Fist of the Remote Control, for example. And the vast majority of the time, he's fighting the random baddie of the week on his goal to fight the big baddie in the current plotline. And again, remember that Fist of the North Star was a weekly serialization, so every single chapter, he's basically fighting somebody. Honestly, if you were to add up every single person that he exploded, he'd likely have a body count up there with like a nuclear bomb. Here he is, beating a dude with a playing card tattoo. Here he is, making a fat guy deflate like a balloon. The point isn't the fight, it's why they're fighting and where the next big fight is going to be. So Ken finally finds this king guy, and it's Shin, the dude who stole Ken's fiance and gave him the Big Dipper chest scars. And this is basically how backstory works for Fist of the North Star. Generally, you have no clue what is happening until like right before a fight or mid-fight or sometimes after a fight. You get a bit of a dump of exposition to explain why Ken has to fight this particular person, and then you can finally understand why this fight is super duper important. But even then, like, sometimes it's still pretty unclear. Is this a little bit clunky? Yeah, but do you really care when people's heads are exploding and blood is running down people's bodies like Gatorade in those early 2000s commercials? Not even a little. So in the spirit of Fist of the North Star, let's exposition dump right before a big fight. So Kenshiro was engaged to this beautiful girl named Yuria. A year ago, the couple visited Ken's father's grave. It's not actually Ken's dad though, it's his fist teacher Ryukin, but the guy raised him, so it's basically the same thing. The two say goodbye to Daddy Dead Fist and then get ready to leave on their journey. And this part really cracked me up because Ken is all like, "It's a dangerous age. We really need to work together." I don't know why doing Ken makes me pull out my terrible Stallone. But then he goes and he picks up Yuria so she can't do anything herself. I'm sure it's more of a just married crossing the threshold kind of thing, but the timing with the dialogue is really funny. It's perfect. Anyway, Shin shows up with like 10 hockey players, declares his love for Yuria, and promptly fingers Kenshiro's chest until Yuria says she'll love him instead of Ken. It's like a super dick move, and then Ken's like all like broken on the floor in defeat. Cut back to the present, and you're like, oh shit, it's payback time. Yuria is now sitting behind Shin as him and Kenshiro stand off. So they do the fighting, and there's fists flying and stereotypical anime action lines between blows, and Ken is like way stronger than he was in the flashback, and he's totally kicking Shin's butt. However, this fight is a matchup between Hokuto Shinken and Nanto Seiken. Historically, these two fighting styles are polar opposites, Fist of the North Star versus Fist of the South Star, aka Ken's style hits people's channeling points and causes them to explode from the inside, whereas Nanto Seiken destroys an opponent from the outside. And I mean that literally. Shin just pushes his hand straight through people, like that one scene in Kung Pao. And somehow he also does this with Ken's hand too. Shin thrusts his finger right through Ken's hand. You're like, oh no, Ken's a goner. But he isn't. Ken took that blow on purpose and grabs hold of Shin's hand so he can't retract it and punches right through Shin's hand. Everybody's hands are just ruined. It is a bloody awesome mess, and if you weren't already hooked, this moment is so sick there's no way you aren't going to finish this manga. Ken follows this up with his infamous and just completely wrecks Shin's entire body. Game fucking over. But not everything is as it seems. Yuria is not Yuria. She's a doll of Yuria. And then Shin cries. I told you there's a lot of crying. And we get another flashback where Yuria offs herself from the top of the tower our burly boys just fought on. She's dead, dude. She's dead! Shin follows suit and throws himself off the tower so he doesn't die by Ken's fist. It's fucking nuts, man. You finish that chapter having no idea what's gonna come next, but it literally doesn't matter. The twists and turns paired with the awesome fighting is all you need to keep you reading. But before we go any further, let's talk about fists.
You will now receive the Fist of Fury. Prepare the long rubber glove.
So in the first volume, you get a bunch of backstory on the fisting styles we're going to see throughout the series. And they do have an importance in understanding why Ken is facing who he's facing. So let's talk about some ancient assassination styles for a sec. Now Ken's Hokuto Shinken, the divine fist of the North Star, is an ancient assassination art originally from China. So yes, the story does take place on our Earth and in a similar timeline, I guess. Practitioners of this art can focus all their energy into a single fist and strike the body's hidden channeling points, damaging the victim from within. And the entire idea of this fist came from Tetsuo Hara's editor, Nobuhiko Horie, insisting that Kenshiro needed his own signature martial arts style. Horie stumbled across an anecdote of a Chinese medical student overstimulating an acupressure point and making a condition worse instead of better.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
He realized this was perfect for Kenshiro because it would allow Ken to take on far bigger opponents and still have the means to win fights by making them explode. Here's the thing though, there's 708 hidden channeling points within the human body, and they don't all make people go kablooey. Some make people die in 3 seconds, others make people die in 3 days, and one of them is like a truth serum for information, and another immobilizes the body, and one can cure blindness, and one erases memory. There's one that makes the victim's legs walk backwards endlessly. Essentially, Hokuto Shinken can literally do anything. So it's basically an open slate on what might happen whenever Ken hits a channeling point, but I think it's so open-ended that Bronson realized Hokuto Shinken almost became a Deus Ex Machina device immediately, and he really slowed down on introducing non-lethal techniques partway through the manga so that Ken had to struggle, to succeed. It's kind of an important part of the hero's journey. Now, Hokuto Shinken is only supposed to be passed down to one successor per generation, but Nanto Seiken is basically the opposite. It's the Fist of the South Star, and following that opposite path, it has many successors and even many branches based on the original style. You can think of it kind of like the different breathing techniques in Demon Slayer. There's a bunch of different branches, but they're all based on the original sun breathing technique. I don't really know if that's spoilers or not, but Nanto Seiken is the same way. There's 6 primary branches that splinter out into 108 different sects. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways to fist somebody.
I wonder where my glove will go.
So while the Hokuto Shinken and Nanto Seiken styles were forbidden to ever fight, Shin broke that rule when he stole Yuria, and after Shin's death, several other fighters in Nanto styles pop up, including the 6 masters of Nanto, 1 for each of the primary branches. I know that's a lot, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves in the story here, but it's a lot easier to understand things that are coming down the line if I explain this stuff here. So the names Hokuto and Nanto are actually derived from a Chinese constellation myth that features features two sages, Hokuto and Nanto, as the gods of death and life. The constellation connection actually goes even further. Obviously, there's only one North Star, hence why there's only one successor to Hokuto Shinken. However, the Nanto Rokusei, or South Dipper constellation, is made up of 6 stars, hence why there's 6 masters of the art. So almost every martial artist Kenshiro fights down the line is going to use a version of the South Star, or an even weaker martial art. You'll see stuff like the Silent Fist of the South Star, or Leaping Blade of the Grounded Fist. And if it doesn't have star at the end, Kenshiro is immediately going to destroy those guys. And if it does have star at the end, he might have a little trouble, but he's eventually going to destroy those guys. There's a few exceptions to these rules, but we'll go over them when we get there. Got it? Good. Let's go. So back in the story, Kenshiro does some more traveling and some more fighting, which he's going to do a lot, beating up on a couple more Nanto users along the way. And this is basically just a transition phase to get from Kenshiro's backstory into the main arc that's going to run for the next 100-ish chapters. And this is what I'm going to personally call the good shit arc, because for real, this storyline is the best that Fist of the North Star has to offer. First, it actually makes sense. Second, it's epic as fuck. And third, there's some really, really good story writing in here. And the arc that comes after, you'll see when we get there. So this plotline begins in chapter 28/episode 23 when a brand new Nanto user emerges. Now, unlike every other Nanto user before, this guy seems pretty legit. He's killing bad guys, chopping off arms, slicing people's heads off like they're butter. But there's one problem. He's vowed to kill the man with 7 scars on his chest. Hey, Blue, can you find the man with 7 scars on his chest? Cutting back to Ken, he's just stumbled into a new village that has a Yuria doppelganger. Is Ken's past coming back to haunt him? Not really. This chick is named Mamiya and she has Beyblade yo-yos. Both Ken and Rei, that's this guy, his name is Rei, get hired as bodyguards to protect the village from thieves. During the fight, they both realize the other uses one of the fancy fists. Fancy fists. So after some time killing NPCs together, they form a sort of like brother in arms bond. All the while, Rei has no clue Ken is walking around with one of those scars on his chest. And after a particularly enjoyable 2v100 or so fight, Ken finally asks Rei why he's searching for the man with 7 scars, and Rei responds by showing Kenshiro a dirty wedding veil, his sister's, before she was captured by the man with 7 scars. Oh, the plot thickens.
Boy, that's a thick-ass boy! Damn!
Rei and Ken are about to set off to fight more NPCs that don't matter, but Mamiya decides she's gonna come too. And of course, on occasion, Fist of the North Star does show its age. This is one of those occasions. Rei is all like, woman should be fighting. And Mamiya's like, screw you, dude. I'm a warrior. I'm not a woman. And then he just straight up rips off all her clothing, is like, why are you hiding your boobs if you're not a woman? And obviously they were legitimately going for something here, but I don't think the execution's gonna go over well on Twitter. Despite being insta-canceled, the reason this happened was because Rei sees his sister in Mamiya and doesn't want her to get hurt. So his actions are supposed to be taken as like a harsh but caring kind of thing. But instead, you know, he commits sexual assault. And Mamiya ends up coming anyway, so it didn't really need to happen, whatever. However, and this is a personal note, if you do decide to read the Fist of the North Star manga, be careful not to get to volume 3, page 65 when you're on a flight sitting between a normie watching sports and another normie watching Harry Potter. It's really awkward when the one titty scene in the entire manga comes out the one time that you're reading in public and you can't hide what's on the page. Anyway, Rei and Ken go to save Irie, who's Rei's sister, but they end up needing to fight each other, so the bandits won't kill her outright. They're using Irie's life as revenge to force Rei and Ken to kill each other. And Rei's freaking out because he doesn't want his sister to die. We get one of those exceptionally rare moments when Ken opens up about his emotions. Rei's fear of losing his sister triggers Ken's memories of Yuria. He finally acknowledges the indescribable feeling of emptiness left inside him, a deep, sorrowful pit of nothingness, a void. And while this doesn't seem particularly important just yet, it's going to be. Literally each and every step that Kenshiro takes through sorrow and despair in the series becomes critically important at the climax. But the duo do end up saving Irie after they trick the bandits by striking each other's channeling points that induce a temporary death-like state. Again, channeling points can do anything. I wonder if Kenshiro could like make Superman explode. That would be really cool. Then again, like maybe because Superman isn't a human and he's actually from Krypton, that he wouldn't have the same channeling points as a human would. It also kind of makes you wonder about why he calls himself the Man of Steel. You think he would call himself the Alien of Steel? Or just like the alien that has all the normal things that his species of alienness has. Anyway, after they save Irie, Ken reveals his 7 scars to Rei, but Rei's all like, nah brah, you're a straight up homie. I know you didn't steal my sis, and she's alright. And he's right, but that still leaves the question, who did? Irie only knows that the man who captured her had 7 scars on his chest and always wore a black helmet. But just that small description is enough for Ken to realize the monster behind the abduction. Ken readies himself to depart, asking Rei to watch over Bat and Rin because his next opponent is family. It'll be a battle between 2 Hokuto Shinken masters. Wait a minute, stop the tape, hold the phone. We already went over how Hokuto Shinken only has 1 successor. Remember, North Star Fist only has 1 successor, South Star has like 6. Rei is just as confused, so Ken lays his cards on the table. Ken has 3 brothers, though not blood related. Each is trained in Hokuto Shinken. However, there can only be 1. Highlander style. And that caused a great deal of conflict between these 4 brothers. And this man, posing as Kenshiro, is Jaggy, one of Ken's older brothers and a complete asshole. What? You guys think I do this shit in one day? The last section took me like 3 hours. So we get another couple flashbacks to explain the history between Jaggy and Kenshiro. See, Jaggy never really finished his Hokuto training, preferring to just use a sawed-off shotgun, but when Kenshiro was named successor of the art, Jaggy was furious. So Jaggy basically tries to make Ken rescind his title, and then Ken hits him in the face so much that his head is going to like basically explode, so he has to wear this like whole face harness to keep his head together. Super metal. But yeah, needless to say, Jaggy doesn't really like Ken anymore. The brothers do the fighting, and honestly, Jaggy was no match for a younger Kenshiro, and he's certainly not up to snuff for post-apocalypse Kenshiro. But Ken absolutely wipes the floor with Jaggy, especially after Jaggy happens to mention that he's the one who curdled Shin's mind. Which, like, I'm gonna be honest, that's kind of a weird way to describe what he did. But therefore, it's Jaggy's fault that Yuri had died, so Ken goes into a rage unlike anything we've seen so far. You really see Ken's full power. I mean, the dude is destroying the floor with a single punch, able to tank hits from a building column as though it's made out of paper. He completely massacres Jaggy without mercy, and as the guy's head begins to spout blood, his last words take Kenshiro by surprise.
Have you forgotten you have 2 more older brothers? Soon you'll know what true suffering is.
So with that revelation, obviously Kenshiro has new direction, which is to find his other 2 brothers, and that's basically what the rest of the good shit arc is. It's a struggle to right the wrongs of the past and prove that Kenshiro is the true successor of Hokuto no Shinken. Luckily, Rei gives us some nice exposition on how there's 4 heirs to Hokuto Shinken in the first place. See, in the 1,800 year history of Hokuto Shinken, the fighting style has passed down from one successor to another. However, the previous successor, Ryukin, never had a son of his own, so in order to preserve the martial art, he instead adopted 4 sons with the intention of choosing one of them to carry on the legacy. Now, those not chosen were supposed to get their fists sealed or their memories wiped, so you either get broken hands or a broken brain. It's a pretty bad outcome. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the memory wipe is like, but as far as like sealing somebody's fist, I guess it kind of makes sense, right? Because like this is essentially like a deadly weapon. It's like giving somebody a bazooka that they can just carry around all the time. And let's be real, I mean, if these guys got their fists sealed like they were supposed to, this post-apocalyptic wasteland would kind of be a better place. Though I gotta say, 1,800 years without any succession issues that's a pretty good streak. Anyway, Ryukin's 4 children were Rao, the oldest, Toki, the second oldest, Jaggy, and then finally Kenshiro, who was the youngest. Ken was chosen as his successor, but obviously something went haywire because all the brothers are out there and they all still know Hokuto Shinken, and expect all of those brothers to play significant roles moving forward, except Jaggy, because Jaggy's dead. Now, the next mini arc revolves around Toki specifically, and Kenshiro is actually happy that Toki is alive because he has nothing but good memories of the guy. Apparently, Toki was a kind and gentle soul who wanted to use Hokuto Shinken's channeling points in order to help people rather than hurt them. I mean, I guess it's still self-defense. It's just self-defense against germs and boo-boos. Gonna be honest though, not super useful after nuclear apocalypse. But as we know, Hokuto Shinken can do anything, so many of these channeling points can be used to cure injuries, disease, and other issues in the body. I wonder if you can like punch cancerous tumors to death. However, it seems like Kenshiro's memories of Toki are contrasting pretty hard to the current reality. So Ken comes to the village of Miracles, where Toki went and fixed the injuries and trauma many of the people in the town were suffering from. However, in the space of a single night, Toki's warm smile gave way like a mask, and he began using the villagers for experiments, killing most of them in the process. He's like a kung fu Heinrich Himmler. To Kenshiro's dismay, the story of these activities seems to be true, but as luck would have it, a couple of arm wrestling hustlers looking for Toki's next victim happen to show up at the saloon where Ken is chilling. But this isn't just regular arm wrestling. This is hardcore arm wrestling with saw blades. Loser also has to dismember their hand. And of course, Ken isn't dissuaded. He's so damn strong, he snaps the guy's arm in half before it ever reaches the saw blade. He then forces these pawns to bring him to Toki's lair. So Ken confronts Toki and is like, yo dude, why did you change? And Toki's like, hey, it's because this current era needs violence more than medicine. And I don't know, he might be right. Maybe like a mix of both would be good. But Ken doesn't like this, so the two do the fighting. But Toki isn't at all like Jaggy. He basically taught Kenshiro how to fight, so he knows all of Ken's moves. But upon seeing Toki's sheer glee at violence and blood, Kenshiro declares that he's not the real Toki. Kenshiro's pure fighting spirit rips his entire shirt off and he pounces at the man. However, Toki does the same shirt removal process, showing a back scar that could only be on the real Toki. This is a scar he got saving Kenshiro when they were young, and with Toki's identity all but confirmed, Kenshiro is split between sadness and anger as he realizes that he must kill yet another older brother. However, Toki exploits Ken's kindness by using a human shield, which allows Toki to hit some channeling points on Ken's back that make him T-pose like it's a Bethesda game. And things are looking pretty rough until Ray joins the battle, and I don't know how he got there or knew what was going on, but he's here to save the day. And immediately Ray is like, that's not your brother. That's some dude I know named Amoeba who can change the shape of his face. That doesn't explain anything about the back scar, but I guess we're just, not supposed to worry about that. Don't worry about it. So Ray calls Amoeba an idiot, which is a sick burn. But it's also kind of true because Amoeba thinks he can out Hokuto, the chosen successor of the art. Amoeba didn't even know Hokuto Shinken teaches ways to counteract attacks on channeling points, which Ken promptly does. Un-T-poses with patch no jutsu and completely wrecks Amoeba. And then he hits those channeling points that I talked about earlier, where it just makes people walk backwards forever, and Amoeba goes off the edge of a building like a human lemming. It's pretty awesome. So while Ray and Ken are off dealing with fake Toki, Mamiya is out looking for the real Toki. And again, I have no idea how Ray and Mamiya knew where Ken was or how to find the real Toki, but it turns out that he's captive in Cassandra, the city of wailing demons. Like wailing, like not demons that hunt whales, like they're screaming. Anyway, to be honest, this arc really isn't that important and we got a lot of fisting to get through, so I'll just make it quick for you. The important pieces to note from this section are that Toki saved Kenshiro and Yuria from radioactive ash, and he does this by locking them inside a shelter, and he weathers the storm on the outside. He has radiation poisoning and is certain to die sooner rather than later. Ken saves him from the city, stomping out the draconic warden of Cassandra on his way. Now, Toki is an interesting character because he's the only one of the brothers that supports Kenshiro's claim to the successor of Hokuto no Shinken. He acts as a guide for Kenshiro, think Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker kind of thing, which is weird considering that Ken was chosen to be the successor of Hokuto no Shinken, but for some reason Toki's way better at everything than he is, and smarter too. Part of this is like passing down his wisdom to Ken. I don't know, maybe Toki was just like too much of a wuss. But anyway, the whole point of the Cassandra City arc with the Wailing Demons, that was supposed to keep Kenshiro and Toki from reuniting, but they do anyway, so I digress. So that draconic warden that I mentioned earlier in Cassandra answers to a warlord named Ken-O, aka the King of Fists, who's a beast of a man who's been stealing secret techniques from fighters and then confining them in Cassandra, so he's the only successor of all these martial arts. And at this point, he can probably fist more styles than anyone left on the planet, which is, his title. Not only that, but both Jaggy and Amoeba were taking orders from Ken-O, meaning that he's got a personal connection to Kenshiro too. That's right, the big baddie, the main boss, the final showdown is going to be against Ken-O, otherwise known as Ra, Kenshiro's eldest brother. Now, is this kind of obvious because he's the last brother that we're supposed to meet? Yes, but it doesn't change how much of an absolute beast this guy is. So here's the scene for basically the rest of this specific storyline. Rao has taken up the title of warlord and amassed an incredible army while also mastering every single fisting style he can find. He's a man of unparalleled ambition that plans to take over everything and declare himself as ruler of the world and beyond. He wants to rule the heavens and is willing to fight gods if he has to, which sounds like radiation poisoning brain mush to me. I don't know if there's gods in here or how you would even go about fighting them, but he thinks he can do it and he will if he has to. But obviously, naturally, this guy needs to be stopped, and who can do it? Well, the only one to do it is Ken, because this is his story. It's not like Toki can do it, because even though he's still alive, he's very weak due to the radiation poisoning that's slowly killing him, so he can't really help Ken fight Rao, which is all completely wiped away later, and Toki absolutely fights Rao, like multiple times. But we'll get there. And this, of course, is the perfect time for Buronson to bring in a new plot point, the Alcor Star. It's a star, it's like right next to the Big Dipper. It's real, you can actually look it up, fun. You could also probably just go outside and see it. In Fist of the North Star, though, seeing Alcor is a symbol of prophesized death. In real life, it just means that you don't live in a city with too much light pollution. But those who can see it are said to die within 1 year. Toki can see it, which means he's gonna die, which means that he has a very limited time to help out Kenshiro. And then another insane plot point gets dropped on us after Toki is rescued. He's sitting there with Mamiya and comments that it's remarkable how similar Mamiya looks to Yuria. Made curious by this comment, Mamiya asks what kind of person Yuria was, and then Toki just like drops the bomb that he was also in love with Yuria. Also, Rao loved Yuria. And there's like a bunch of other characters that loved Yuria too. She's just, everybody loves her. And Mamiya comments that there's no way she could compete with Yuria. Instead, she's more like that star next to the Big Dipper shining alongside it, albeit much smaller. And then Toki is like, what? You can see the star, dude, that means you're gonna die. Oh no, you're gonna die too. Now you're probably thinking you got this plot all figured out, right? Kenshiro, he's going to do the fighting, he's going to fall in love with Mamiya, and then he's going to save her from the Death Omen Star. No! Fun fact, Mamiya basically doesn't matter at all. I don't know why she's almost Yuria's twin. Maybe she was supposed to be more integral to Ken's story and then they changed the plot. I don't know. Nothing romantic ever happens with her. She's basically just a side character who barely has a personal story from here on out. The only important thing to remember is that all these over testosterone dudes love Yuria, and obviously that's going to come into play down the line. Oh, also Rei can see the Death Omen star, so he's going to die too. Everybody can see the star. Maybe it's just like not invisible. So I know that every single one of you wants to hear every single fight and encounter in complete specific detail, line by line, image by image, but we're going to skip some of that because that's literally in every single chapter, and we're just going to get to the confrontation with Ken and Rao. So the Ken-O army is attacking the village Airi, Bat, and Rin are staying in. Rei actually arrives before Kenshiro, fights off some bad guys, and then Ken-O shows up, and this guy looks like a Dark Souls boss. He is on a giant horse that's bigger than most people, and he is huge on top of it. He's the type of guy that would have a one-hit kill move with 0 telegraphing. He's so strong, he's not even willing to get off his horse to fight Rei. And let's be honest, he doesn't need to. Kenshiro shows up just in time to see Rei stabbed through the chest with a single fat sausage finger from Rao. Apparently this fingering move also jabs at one of the channeling points that leaves Rei with only 3 days to live, so Rei's gonna die. And look at, he saw the star, he's gonna die. And now it's Ken's turn to fight Rao. So the fight begins with Ken and his older brother, and they leap into the air or something, horse included. Kenshiro gets a hit on Rao, but on Rao's riposte, he almost kills Ken. I mean, the guy would have died if Rei hadn't shot an arrow into Rao's leg at the right perfect moment. But this causes Rao's concentration to temporarily lapse, leaving Ken only beaten half to death instead of completely to death. Rao, in classic evil villain fashion, does the stupidest thing imaginable and shares that the only thing his fighting style is weak against is Toki's fist. And how can that be, you might ask yourself? Aren't all 4 brothers trained in the same fist? Yes, but they're individuals, so they put their own spin on it. So from what I gathered, and maybe I'm wrong here, Jaggi just never actually mastered it, so his fist isn't complete, so he just uses Fist of the Sawed-Off Shotgun. Ken actually uses proper Hokuto Shinken, and Rao uses a version called Gol no Ken, or the Fist of Might. He completely overwhelms his opponents with pure fighting energy and strength. Toki is the odd one out as a pacifist. His self-made technique is called Hokuto Ujoken, aka the North Star Humane Fist. But in the Ultimate Edition, Ken calls it the Humane Face-Breaking Fist, which is just so much of a better name. I feel like finding a way to humanely break somebody's entire face, I mean, that's worth the practice. I mean, nobody can be mad if you do it humanely. Bet you they could market that and like sell it at Trader Joe's. But the special aspect of Toki's Hokuto is that he uses his opponent's strength against them, kind of like Bagua. He must flow like water. He uses fluid motions to embrace the strength of his opponent and direct it back at them. So it makes a lot of sense that Toki's humane style would be the paper to rouse rock, because he's all strength and intensity. As Toki says, only a serene current can calm a rapid stream. So when Toki actually shows up to support Kenshiro, he basically pulls him like he's a goalie who's let in too many pucks. He actually says that Ken doesn't have a 1% chance of beating Rao. Toki knows that Ken doesn't have the heart to kill Rao. The man has lost all empathy. He was overtaken by power and ambition. He killed their father. Guess what? Mid-fight flashback. Rao refuses to have his fist sealed when Ken is named the successor, so Ryuken knocks the shit out of him. I mean, it's no contest. Ryuken's special technique absolutely destroys Rao. But right before the finishing blow to seal Rao's fist, Ryuken has like a heart attack or a stroke or something. It's that very anime, like grasps his chest, like it falls down. And of course, in that moment, Rao's like and kills him. Back in the present, Toki benches Ken to make him watch him fight. He actually hits Ken's channeling point that forces Ken's body to listen to his commands, because Hokuto Shinken can do anything. So he just has to watch Toki take on Rao. And Toki's fighting style is completely unique. He flows with the energy from his opponent, mimicking their movement and reflecting it at all the right movements, but it's not enough. In a totally bonkers move, Rao grabs a trident off his horse and stabs it through his foot and Toki's, cementing them in place so Toki can't use his fancy flow-like water footwork. I want to see that move in a fighting game. Like we already got Yoshimitsu stabs himself through his stomach, and if it hits you, it does a ton of damage. But no, I want to see somebody with a trident stab it through its own foot and somebody else's foot, so you can just keep them there and punch, 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 punch. Just make it a command grab. Come on, we can do this. So Toki's final stand is a direct attack, slicing at Rao's side, but it's not enough to take him down. And then Mamiya shoots an arrow at Rao because she also has arrows, and Mamiya is there. Forgot about that. And Rao spends a key point to flick it back at her. That's a key as an energy, not like a car key. But this is all weird because couldn't he have done that to the arrow that shot his leg earlier? Don't worry about it. Ken manages enough willpower to break Toki's control over his body to stop the deflected arrow before it pierces Mamiya. So I guess he just needed some extra time to break out of the channeling point paralysis or whatever. Hokuto Shinken can do anything. But now Ken is mad and attacks Rao, but at the same moment, Rao counterattacks Ken. They're both injured heavily from the fight, fists embedded in each other's chests, rivers of blood erupting from every pore in their body, and then Toki basically blows a whistle as though it's a boxing fight, and the final round ends. Rao leaves. He just leaves. Toki just stops the fight, and Rao gets on his horse and just trots away. The whole fight could have ended right there, but no, we got 1,500 more pages to see that happen. So what do we do with those 1,500 pages? We use them to make Ken sad. Really sad. So sad he becomes strong from being sad. Okay, so that was a lot for everybody. I know it was a lot. It was a lot for me. If you don't understand what's going on, that's fine. I barely do myself. But now everybody is just resting from their injuries after all of this, except for Ray, who's getting worse every hour and is eventually going to die. He's only got 3 days left to live. So in order to make sure Ray has some really cool final moments before he does kick the bucket, Mamiya does the stupidest thing imaginable and goes alone to another town to get medicine, as though that's gonna help. Listen, if Ken can't undo what Rao did with the power of Hokuto Shinken can do anything, I don't think aspirin's gonna help. So of course Mamiya gets captured on the way to the town by a throwaway villain, literally called the Dog Whisperer, and Ray and Ken need to go save her. They also took this time to super bump up Mamiya's sex appeal for some reason. She stopped wearing pants and just has the shortest dress or skirt you could possibly imagine. Like I said, it feels like they changed the script for her character, and now her only purpose is to make sure that Ray has a feel-good ending. So Ken and Ray save Mamiya and they beat up Caesar Malone, but then they see that Mamiya has a tattoo of UD, which stands for Yuta. So now they have to go beat up that guy because he abused her earlier before this entire storyline ever started. And I guess Yuta is another of the 6 Nanto masters, and he's allied himself with Rao, but honestly, it's just not that important. This is all for the benefit of Rei dying with honor and showing the bond between Ken and Rei, so it hurts Ken even more when Rei dies. Which, I get it, okay? It's important for Kenshiro's character growth. Every time somebody dies, he wants to honor their last wishes, and it makes him sad, which makes him stronger, because he's got more conviction. But it's weird to, like, use Mamiya as a tool for that. I feel like this is kind of just filler. It isn't really progressing the storyline in a meaningful way. Also, this whole, like, wanting to fulfill somebody's dying wish, I mean, look at the way that they did it in Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, it's just the grandpa, and that, like, changes Yuji forever, and he's always trying to figure it out. This happens, like, 30 times in Fist of the North Star. And this isn't to say that Rei's upcoming death isn't meaningful. It is. I just think there were stronger ways to go about his death other than a side quest. Anyway, the 3 track down Yuta, but Rei is on his last legs. Ken is literally carrying him at this point. Toki, who's there, offers Rei a double-edged sword option. He can extend Rei's life a short while, like a few hours, by hitting a certain channeling point, but at the cost of all pain increasing several times over. He can do that, or take the pill that Mamiya found and it'll just kill him peacefully. Obviously, he picks the former because this is anime manga and that's the way that you do the badass. And then for some reason, he literally goes Super Saiyan. His hair changes colors, his muscles go insane. The dude looks like a Greek god. I think it's a full acceptance of death, right? And now the pain no longer matters. So he's essentially unstoppable until his body gives out. So maybe it's more like Kaioken than Super Saiyan, but you get my point. So Rei kills Yuta, obviously, and Yuta kind of professes his love for Rei at the same time. It's weird, minor backstory. They grew up training together apparently, but again, it doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it. Yuta might be bisexual, yay for inclusion. Anyway, Rei saved Mamiya and now he can die with dignity. He says his goodbyes as his body starts to fall apart, walks into a house, closes the door, and it's not shown, but you know, he's finally dying on the other side. But not seeing it honestly makes the impact stronger. His entire body gives out, but all we can see is a puddle of blood seeping out from beneath the door. And that's like really good shot composition, honestly. I think that choice was perfect. And of course they light a funeral pyre for him, and Ken vows to never forget his friend Rei. And there's a small silver lining that for some reason now Mamiya can't see the Alcor star anymore, so Rei's actions did save her life, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, if you see the star, you saw the star, so you're supposed to die, but I guess that can go away. I don't know. So almost immediately after Rei's death, Ken makes a new best friend who's one of the 6 Nanto masters. Should also probably note here that it's difficult to tell how much time has lapsed between chapters in this story. Literally months could be going on between each little segment here, and I wouldn't know. But because of that, it seems like Ken's best buddy just died, and then he immediately replaced him. So the new best bud is named Shrew, and he's also blind. And basically, he immediately takes Rei's place, albeit for a short while. Shrew actually engages Ken in a fight first to assess his abilities, because this is manga, and we learn an important piece of information. Hokuto Shinken has a secret technique called Seiyation, or the spirit of water reflection. Basically, in just one fight, Hokuto Shinken users can learn and recreate an enemy's fist. Hokuto Shinken can do anything. I don't know why this wasn't explained earlier, but it basically means that Ken can use any fighting style from anybody he's ever fought before. That includes every single Nanto user and Rei. But it turns out that Shrew was Rei's best buddy and also saved Kenshiro's life one time when he was in training and blinded himself in order to do so. And there's more flashbacks about this, but it's basically just there to reinforce a emotional connection to Shrew for the reader. Because we just met him like 10 minutes ago, you know, and he's supposed to be important. Anyway, the next mini boss is a guy named Souther. He's also a Nanto user and uses the Phoenix Fist of the South Star and is a rival warlord to Rao. Rao has been unable to defeat him since channeling points have no effect on him. I don't know what that means. Like, you think this guy would be the biggest bad guy, right? So Ken gets captured and Shrew gets tortured and there's a pyramid and there's child slavery. It's a lot. And ironically, it's not that important. It's basically just more build-up for trying to force the reader to like Shrew and make his death matter. Because of course he dies. I mean, how are you going to make Ken sad if all his friends don't die? This is a trend. The good people in Ken's life are on a rotating door policy. They come in, they make a good impression, and then they die, leaving Kenshiro with one less friend and a deeper well of sorrow. Shrew is just the next sacrificial lamb in line to touch Ken's heart before dying in front of him. Even though it's not very important, this mini arc is a good read, but it's heavily drawn out, so let's just speedrun the main points real quick. Ken gets saved by Shrew's son, who then takes his own life with dynamite to stop anyone from finding Ken. Rao actually saves Ken and tends his wounds because he wants Ken to figure out Souther's secret to how he's immune to channeling points. Ken gets so mad he literally closes his own wounds through sheer will because Hokuto Shinken can do anything. And there's a big face-off on a pyramid where Souther ends up dying. His body is made weird so his channeling points are all in random spots, but then he hulks out and his veins are so big you can just see his channeling points. Basically everyone is in attendance for this fight, including Rao and Toki, but Shrew dies in the process, and when the dust settles, 2 more Nanto masters are dead, making a total of 5. Shin, Rei, Yuta, Souther, and Shrew. There's only one left of the 6 masters. However, the final Nanto is the catalyst for the climax of the story, and there's still one more extremely important fight that must go down before Kenshiro is finally ready to take on Rao. So Rao is fully healed, Toki is on his last legs, and the final battle between the brothers is about to begin. Toki plans to confront Rao one final time, but Kenshiro blocks his path. It's kind of like a I care about you, so prove to me you can still fight moment. In a one-move fight, the two battle to see if Toki still has the strength to fight Rao. And of course, it ends in a draw because manga, and Kenshiro acknowledges that Toki would have been the better successor had he not gotten sick. I also acknowledge this. But remember, despite it literally being a one-move duel, Toki and Ken have now crossed fifths. So by Fist of the North Star's Asinine logic, Kenshiro now has all the knowledge and ability of Toki's humane face-breaking fist, the one thing that Rao is scared of. So Ken and Toki journey to Toki's parents' resting place, the hometown where he was born and raised, and where he plans to be buried. There's a prepared headstone for him and another prepared for his blood brother, who is Rao. And when I say blood brother, I mean brother by blood. So yes, despite being told this entire time that none of the 4 guys that were training with Hokuto Shinken were actually related, they were related. 2 of them were. Bet you weren't expecting that. I wasn't. But don't worry, the family tree gets a lot bigger in the second half. Yes, second half. There you go, that's some foreshadowing. Stick around to the end, like, share, subscribe. So we get this cutscene where Ryukin first finds all these boys and initially only wants to train Rao, but eventually realizes Toki's talent for martial arts and trains them both, while warning them that only one of them can be the successor and the other one will have their fists sealed. Rao has Toki promise to seal his fist if he ever makes a wrong choice, and Toki is prepared to honor that promise today, now in the future, this day. And just so you know, the entire backstory of the series basically gets retconned in the second half. Again, fun. I have a lot to say about the end of this manga. Anyway, the two fight viciously in the present, and Toki does something utterly unexpected. Almost like the flip of a switch, he starts using Rao's Fist of Might, a fist he swore he would never use until his last battle. The tides seem like they're changing. Despite his illness, Toki looks buff as fuck and has Rao on his back foot. He points up, declaring, "Look up to the heavens. You should see the Death Omen star." And Rao follows Toki's finger, and sure enough, the Alcor star is shining brightly overhead. For the first time, both fighters dueling to the death can see the star. No one knows who will come out on top when the heavens favor neither of them. With a surge of adrenaline and strength, Toki makes his move, kicking Rao like a goddamn hacky sack, high into the air and rushing upwards after him to land a multitude of hits on his older brother before gracefully landing back on the ground. He's juggling Rao like Jin juggles me in Tekken 8. It's bullshit. Rao is bleeding on the ground, and in this moment of opportunity, Toki drives his hand directly into Rao's chest for the kill, but no! It's not enough. Rao's big meaty moves are too strong. Rao grabs Toki's arm and pulls it out before he could strike a single channeling point. He begins to cry, realizing Toki's secret. Ripping away Toki's leggings, Rao reveals his big, fat Sekako scars, which are channeling points that give you temporary inhuman strength, but at the cost of your life. Toki had struck his own channeling points to match the Keno Fist of Might. Hokuto Shinken can do anything. Rao, cursing Toki's illness, cries over the end of his brother's life, knowing that if Toki was well enough and had fought with his own fist instead of the Fist of Might, he may very well have won. It's a somber scene that really humanizes Rao in a different light, honestly. You can see that somewhere inside of him there's still love, still understanding, like Darth Vader. And you can see that Toki used the Fist of Might over the humane fist of face breaking in order to get closer to Rao before his death. It's a depressing scene, honestly. It leaves both brothers crying, and his last words before riding away on his giant horse are to Kenshiro.
Keno's reign of terror will begin anew. Come, try to claim my life anytime you please.
And honestly, of all of the parts of Fist of the North Star, this one probably hits the hardest. Also note that Ken and Rao didn't fight. This wasn't the last fight. But yeah, Toki's death, you know it's coming basically from the second you meet him. You know he's sick, you know it's only gonna get worse, but he goes out with this like amazing bang. Really makes you feel something in your soul. I'm not being sarcastic. I just usually sound sarcastic. I don't know if it's the struggle between two brothers who come to an understanding of one another at the gates of death, or if it's Toki's choice to end his life with meaningful action that unleashed emotions long thought lost to Rao. But whatever it is, this fight and these last scenes hold immense weight and sadness. It's the way I'd want a hero to die in this story. It's the way that I would have wanted Rei to go earlier. Because losing Toki is losing one of the very rare few characters that are actually good in this post-apocalypse, and you can really feel that loss through the pages and the other characters. It's tough. And that's why this is the good shit arc, because you're not going to find anything better than that moving forward. But that doesn't mean that it's not funny and insane from this point out. So anyway, in the next chapter, Toki's still alive. No, seriously. But they introduced this new character, Ryuga. He's like this celestial wolf or something. Anyway, he works for Rao, except not really. He's not sure which Hokuto master to follow, so he decides to make Ken really mad by killing Toki in order to bring out Kenshiro's full strength. And that can't happen unless he's overcome with grief from Toki's death. Remember, Ken always needs more sadness. And yes, you are remembering correctly. Toki hit his own channeling points that are guaranteed going to kill him. I don't know how at this point he's still alive, but he is. But don't worry about it. Those emotional scenes still matter, and it's fine because Toki's going to die here anyway as a plot device. So he says farewell and the blood splatter goes crazy, and then the fucking stars and the Big Dipper react, and even Rao's like,
Toki, so you've fallen at last.
Would have made a way bigger impact if Rao had killed Toki, but I guess the celestial wolf guy does it instead for reasons. And then Ken gets sadder. Honestly, it's like the opposite of Dragon Ball Z. It's like, instead of going Super Saiyan because you get mad, Ken punches more because he's sad. So yeah, this chapter, Toki's still alive. You don't know it immediately because Ryuga acts really tough and shows Kenshiro's Toki's headband, and it's like dripping in blood. It's very reminiscent of that Lord of the Rings Return of the King scene where they show Frodo's mithril shirt at the Black Gate to prove they caught him when in reality they have no clue where he is. That's an extended edition scene for the uncultured. Anyway, Kenshiro goes Hulkamania and basically wrecks Ryuga in like 10 seconds. It's not even a contest, but Toki just comes out from behind a pillar or something and tells Ken to stop because I guess Ryuga had already given himself a mortal wound before the fight even started. I think it was basically to atone for the atrocities he had to commit in order to get Kenshiro to fight him and for following Rao for so long. It's not really well explained, but that's kind of the vibe I get at least. Honestly, it's kind of dumb. I don't know what the point of this extra fluff is. Oh, but fun reveal right before Ryuga dies. He's Yuria's brother. Remember Yuria? She died like way at the beginning and everybody loves her. Yeah, he's her brother for reasons. So now Kenshiro's killed another brother, but it's a brother-in-law. Anyway, great. More sad for Ken. And Toki is still alive. Barely. He's barely alive. He's still alive though. Very wobbly. He tells Kenshiro to turn his grief into anger, which is incredibly healthy. He then picks up Ryuga's dying corpse and says it's time for them to join the other men who lived and died in these troubled times. They'll join the stars and watch over Kenshiro. And there's this really nice full page panel that has all the Nanto users watching over Toki. It's symbolic of each of these people representing a star in the sky, and they'll all watch over Ken as he takes on Rao. And now Toki's dead. He's dead. He's finally dead. Probably. I mean, we don't really see him die. It's just kind of implied. And with the number of fake outs on Toki's death, I don't feel anything anymore. Okay, so we are finally in the end game now. I probably should have taken another break for a day because I'm tired, but we have this schedule this year. We're trying to get out 22 videos and we don't want any of them to be late. Yeah, I took a break. So we're in the end game now. Keno's army is marching. Well, I actually don't know where they're marching. I think they're marching south. However, it is of vital importance that Ken gets wherever that army is going first. The last general of Nanto is waiting to meet with Kenshiro. We've seen 5 of them die so far, and the final one is chosen to side with Ken over Rao. So Ken must rush to beat Rao's army to their location. Rao had a head start, and he also has a horse the size of a tiny home, but there's these elemental warriors that keep stopping Rao's army to slow his progression. And these 5 warriors are called the Nanto Gosha Sei, aka the 5 chariot stars of the South Dipper, which is honestly a really cool name. Sounds like like an Iron Maiden song. They're sworn guardians of the last Nanto general, and each represents one of the 5 cosmic elements: sea, earth, sky, fire, and wind. Yeah, and that's kind of weird. Like, usually, you know, the other element is water, not sea, but I guess maybe because it's a cosmic element, it's the sea, whatever. Also sky and like air. I didn't know sky was an element. Regardless, they each get at least a few pages before laying down their lives in suicidal attempts to stop Kenno. Also, Ken has a higher likelihood of making it to the last general in time. So tons of fisting happens. It's like one of those crazy European parties that you see online. I mean, there's full chapters of these cosmic elemental guys getting killed by Rao just one after another as he gets increasingly closer to the last Nanto general. And the general's identity has been kept a secret, both from Rao and Ken alike. And I wonder if there's a reason for that. I wonder if it's like somebody they know. Oh, look at that, of course it is. The last general of Nanto is none other than Yuria. You remember Yuria? Like, Yuria. It seems like somehow, even though she threw herself off the top of a tower, she's not dead. No, instead she pulled a major Houdini, and now she's back, and this is a thing. Flashback time. So we go back to that scene with Yuria on the edge of the building, and she does the jump, but she's totally fine, like literally not even a scratch on her, which is very impressive. The Goshusei saved her somehow, don't worry about it. They probably had a giant bouncy castle of something to catch her, and Shin actually comes to his senses and follows their plan to pretend that she's dead. He takes her death upon himself and plays the villain on purpose while planning to fight Kenshiro to the death, knowing one of them will return to Yuria in the end. So major reverse Uno card, turns out that the first bad guy is kind of a hero. Man, all this reading paid off. But honestly, that's like a pretty good, like, Shyamalanian twist, I would say. Like, good writing there. That's actually pretty cool. So Rao and Kenshiro arrive at the... Okay, honestly, I have no idea what this place is called or where it even is. It's like the Celestial Tower, maybe? I honestly don't think they ever named the damn thing, but they arrive at the place where Yuria has been secretly hiding at the same time. The final ocean elemental leader attempts to hold off Rao while Kenshiro goes to find Yuria. So Rao finds the last general, but it's some other girl instead. Wait, who the fuck is this person? She doesn't matter, but apparently she's loved Rao since forever and then promptly kills herself in front of him because he doesn't love her back. It is legitimately that out of the blue, and it is super weird, but that is anime, so and we love it, right? I guess she was like in one panel with one line before this, and now she's dead. This is a point where you're just like, what the fuck is happening? Anyway, Ken and Rao find each other inside the weird unnamed tower and start fighting, and would you believe it, Kenshiro is actually holding his own, and it's all thanks to Toki. Remember, they punched each other once, so now Kenshiro can recreate Toki's entire fist, cause Hokuto Shinken can do anything. So he's moving like water and flowing like a baller until he suddenly switches into Rei's fist. The man is changing from one fist to another flawlessly and smoothly, just fisting left and right. And Kenshiro is basically unhittable while he's doing it. So Rao looks up at him and recognizes the bottomless pit of sadness in Kenshiro's eyes, the void of sorrow he's been building with the loss of each and every friend and the death of each twisted enemy. Ken has achieved mastership over Muso Tensei, subconscious transmigration. This is the final ultimate secret technique of Hokuto Shinken. No one in the entire 1,800 year history of Hokuto Shinken has been able to master it. How does that even make sense? Was the move like a concept or something? I don't know. Anyway, moving on. We're not going to worry about it. So in another flashback, they never get old, right? We're brought back to the moment right before Rao kills his father. He asks about Muso Tensei, and Ryoken responds that the most powerful force in the world is nothingness, the void. And to find life from within the void is the essence of Muso Tensei. Rao will never be able to master the technique because he knows nothing of sorrow. And once again, we're hit with a nice Zen koan, and nobody has the answer for this nothingness in the void, because technically sorrow is something, therefore how could it be nothingness? I don't know. Let's do the manga. Kenshiro, on the other hand, is drenched in sorrow, so the man is overflowing with the deaths of loved ones and rivals alike, and the pains of his battles have etched their way into his very soul, making him more powerful with the death of each and every friend and foe alike. This is the climax of the theming and fist of the North Star. Kenshiro's story is a path of fallen soldiers that he cared for, and the souls of those warriors live on inside him and strengthen him. Through this ultimate technique, Bronson is able to show what it means to healthily hold on to those you love and have lost without having the dead weigh you down, and instead finding strength despite their absence. So the idea is to mourn those you lose, but also to remember what they taught you and to incorporate that into your person. You think of them when you use that knowledge and wisdom they pass on to you, and that way you can still feel close to them. And that is finding strength in your sadness. And this would have been the perfect place for the final battle at the peak of the theming in the show, but no. Some bullshit happens and Rao makes off with Yuria, so he's gone again, and now we gotta wait. So Kenshiro obviously has to follow him to the actual final fight. Oh, and Ken is blind now, but it's fine because he fought Shrew, so now through the power of Hokuto Shinken, which can do anything, he can now fight blind, no problem. Don't worry about it. So Rao does some extra fighting to confront his fear of sad eyes. Literally, Ken's eyes scare him, so he needs to not be afraid of sorrow. Meanwhile, Ken breaks a dude's motorcycle and his eyes are magically healed. I'm serious. I have no clue why that happens. This, like, we're following down a tunnel. So Rao realizes he needs to be a sad boy too in order to match Kenshiro, so he decides to kill Yuria. But does he kill Yuria? Is Toki actually dead? Find out next time on Draft. There's a note here by Tyler that says, I wrote this joke before Toriyama passed, and now I'm sad you don't have to keep it in if you don't want to. Well, I guess we're keeping it in. So the brothers fight again for what, like the third time? But now Rao can use Muso Tensei too. I don't know how. Like, the whole idea of this manga is that Kenshiro continually, gets sad and sad and sad, and then he can use Muso Tensei. And I don't know what Rao did, really, but apparently he's just that good. Which makes you wonder, why didn't he become the Fist of the North Star? Let's just look at more fighting. So now, for reasons, the two are on equal footing. They're so fast, and they're transmuting so quickly, it almost looks like they're passing through each other. Each attack causes blood to flow from every pore on their bodies. At the final turn, the two ready fists with their entire souls within them. I don't know what that means, but it sounds very anime. Rao's soul fist is nothing compared to Kenshiro's soul fist. And there you go, the difference in the end was the friends they made along the way, right? Shonen manga. Seriously though, Rao's soul was completely alone in his fist. Kenshiro, on the other hand, had his love for Yuria, his love for Rao, not to mention every other person who touched his heart during this journey. It's weird because normally the person who's alone has a much stronger fist than the person with love. Shonen manga. But in the end, the fist of love overcomes the fist of might. So yeah, Yuria is still alive. In yet another post-fight flashback, we see Rao stays his fist right before killing her because Yuria begins coughing up blood, and realizing that Yuria is sick and only has a few more months to live, Rao's ambition to kill her evaporates. Instead, he struck her channeling points that induces a state of apparent death. It also just so happens to halt the progress of her disease, because again, channeling points, they could do anything. Rao didn't master Muso Tensei because he killed Yuria, he mastered it because he finally accepted his love for Yuria. Why make rules when you don't follow rules? So with Rao finally getting out-fisted, he accepts defeat. Yuria wakes up and somehow Rao didn't just half her disease's progress, he also gave her a few more years to live by hitting whatever channel point he did. You think he would hit it a few more times. We don't even know what disease she has. Whatever, the time for logic is past. Anyway, Rao goes off to die alone and join Toki in the heavens. Okay, so I guess Toki is for sure dead this time, 100% guys. Kenshiro and Yuria bury Rao with Toki on their family plot, and Kenshiro once again picks up Yuria so they can start their life together. The end. And by that I mean the end of the first half of the manga. That's right, motherfucker, we are halfway through this boy. It wouldn't be the insane story if there wasn't an insane story. So let's talk about the rest of Fist of the North Star that didn't need to exist. So not only did this not need to exist, but I would like to mention that all of it actively contradicts the first half of the storyline, and it is way more wackadoodle. If you're looking for the best of what Fist of the North Star has to offer, it's what we just talked about. If you're looking for the insane story, we're getting into it. Everything we just talked about makes the most sense, not a lot of sense, but it won't hurt your head, and it's really fun to read. It has that strong message about finding strength in sorrow and using your loss in a supportive way down the line. And in many ways, it is a healthy way to deal with grief and loss, and a supportive way to remember those ones no longer with us. Now, do I think that you should use the sadness of grandpa dying to go and poke people until they explode? Probably not, but if your grandpa taught you something cool or was like, hey, I want to see you do this, like maybe you can go and do that for dead grandpa, it helps. Motivation, right? However, we are about to jump a shark 8 volumes long. let's do it. So we've seen this happen with a lot of manga and especially a lot of anime. Fist of the North Star was too popular to end, so it had to be continued. I think one of the most obvious things that we've seen this happen with was Dragon Ball Z, where it was just like, we needed more. The world needed more, so we got Dragon Ball GT. Now, obviously that was retconned, and GT has its fans. I think Super Saiyan 4 is like the coolest thing in the world. But for the most part, Toriyama, rest in peace, my dude, stepped out on that. Whereas Team Bronson, I mean, they did this. They did this. And part of that is because his and Hara's contract got extended from a 3-year to a 5-year one. And I mean, contracts, man, they're hard to break, especially in Japan. Wouldn't wanna try that. But don't get me wrong, this is all really fun still to read and watch. It's just, you have to go into it with the knowledge that you are heading off the deep end, right? We have made our way to Mount Doom. We have tossed the ring into the lava, and then the ring is coming up out of the lava back into our face, and Mount Doom is turning into like I don't know, like a mecha robot. Is it Mount Doom? Alexa, where did Frodo throw the ring in The Lord of the Rings?
In the story, the one who takes the ring is Frodo Baggins to the Mountain of Doom, where he throws it in the lava to destroy it.
Alexa, shut up. And I know that because I've been doing this for so long, there's people out there that absolutely stand the second half of Fist of the North Star, and I respect you. You guys are beautiful and intelligent people. I hope that you can also acknowledge the fact why some people like myself would think that it's pretty crazy. But I will say the final arc is not fun. It's not good, and it makes me angry, okay? So you gotta deal with that. Anyway, if you're continuing on from this point, I recommend a shift in mentality so you can enjoy it too, because the next arc is worth enjoying. Lean into the humor of the inconsistencies rather than finding issues with them. That's what I do. For example, a big part of the next part is crossing the ocean to China to find Rin. We'll get to why Rin is across the ocean in a minute, but what's important to remember is that we were told specifically that there is no more ocean, which means the Pacific Ocean randomly appears one day in Fist of the North Star. And apparently, there's pirates that have been sailing it for years. So they must have just appeared with the ocean too. I guess the ocean was in like another dimension or something. Who knows? You can be Stoneface Ken, or you can be Aviators Ken. Choose wisely. So here's the deal. I'm gonna give you a super fast surface level plot outline of the next part so we can get to the really fun stuff. Let's go 1, 2, 3. So there's a 10-year time skip and Yuri is dead. Ken is a sad boy still. Ren and Bat are like actual people now, and they're leaders of the Hokuto army, which is basically a resistant movement against the Celestial Empire, an imperial capital that rules most of the land now. The capital crumbles and Rin is captured and taken across the sea. So Ken follows and finds himself in a land of super strong fighters where Hokuto Shinken originated. And there's another Hokuto fist called Hokuto Ryuken, and it's evil. There's 3 generals of Hokuto that use this fist, so obviously Ken has to beat them all. This new land is ruled by a class of warriors called Shuda that do whatever they want because they're super strong. All the poor and the weak people in this land have been waiting for a legendary warrior to come and rescue them, and that legendary warrior is named Rao. Oh shit, well, he's not coming, so Kenshiro takes the place of Rao and starts fulfilling the legend. Ken beats one of the generals, and it turns out the second general is his biological brother, and the third one is Rao's biological brother, not Toki. He's still dead, probably. But Rao has another biological brother we never knew about. Oh, and technically there's some incestuous stuff too, but it's cool. No one bangs and everybody dies, so it's all okay. Let's see. Magic is just real now. Like, there's stuff that looks like magic that's just martial arts, but now there's also literal magic. They call it a spell. Rin gets a finger in the back that makes her fall in love with the next person she sees, and she sees Bat, so they're in love now, and Ken beats up Rao's brother as the final boss and then leaves on his final journey. Did you get that? Is it memorized? Good. So let's go through some of the more specifically nutso parts here. First off, the Celestial Emperor is Rin's sister. They were separated at birth, and the sky literally gets torn in two because there's 2 Celestial Emperors because of this thing. But then, that status doesn't really matter for the rest of the manga, so I guess it was only important if people think it's important. The sky also heals, so that's fine. Second, Ken is so goddamn strong at this point that when he enters the storyline, he's literally just beating up entire armies by himself. It's like watching a Dynasty Warriors fight, but it's in a manga. There's hundreds of enemies that just can't do anything against this one guy. Anyway, Rin does eventually get captured and taken across the sea, like I said, and the sea, again, the one that shouldn't exist. And now the land across the sea is called the Land of Asura and is the birthplace of the Hokuto and Nanto martial arts, which is really cool, except we know that Hokuto and Nanto came from China, so really Ken is just crossing the Pacific Ocean to China, and the best panels in this entire manga are Ken just chilling in aviators. He doesn't wear them any other time, but that's my Ken. I love that Ken. But once he does cross the ocean, he finds out about his blood brother, Hyo, and Rao's brother, Kaio. Apparently, Rao, Toki, and Kenshiro all crossed the same sea together when they were young, which is how they ended up in what I would assume is the post-apocalypse Japan. However, that completely contradicts the fact that Toki and Rao are buried with their parents in the first half in Japan, but it's good, it's fine, don't worry about it. We also learn the hidden secret of the Hokuto main lineage, which is 2 sisters had children, but only one can be considered the heir. So one child is made the heir, and I guess the other one's like a butler or something. Kenshiro is the direct ancestor of the heir. Kaio is the direct ancestor of the child who wasn't chosen to be the heir. But Hokuto main lineage blood runs through both of their veins, which means that Kenshiro was actually related to Toki and Rao this whole time as their cousin. It also means he's related to Kaio, which is really cool, and I do like that all those brothers are actually related in some way, even though this is a really crazy way to let everybody know that. But what's less cool is that Hyo, Kenshiro's blood brother, was engaged to Sayaka, who is Kaio's sister, making them cousins. I mean, I guess that's a thing in Japan, and if it's like the post-apocalypse, you kind of gotta do what you gotta do, but none of that happens because Sayaka dies, so don't worry about it. This whole arc also really messes with the idea that Ryukin, the guy who taught Ken, Toki, Jagi, and Rao Hokuto Shinken, didn't have an heir. Kenshiro is literally the direct heir of the main lineage. And who knows, I mean, maybe some of this is covered in the prequel, which is called Fist of the Blue Sky, which just like, we didn't have room for in this video. We'll do something on it some other time, but I don't know. Let me know if it is in the comments, and like I said, we'll cover it another day. But from my understanding, this kind of throws the underlying successorship issue from the first half of the manga into question, right? Why were they all taught Hokuto Shinken when Kenshiro was obviously the heir all along? I'll be honest, it kind of confused me while I was reading, and it's still kind of confusing. The Hokuto Shinken master sends Ken, Rao, and Toki off to Ryukin to be trained in Hokuto Shinken, but if Kenshiro is from the main Hokuto lineage, wouldn't the current successor be his father? So why is Ryukin the current successor? Or maybe Kenshiro is related on his mother's side. Is Ryukin related to Kenshiro? And why was Ken sent across the sea instead of Hyo, who would have been older and have a stronger right to the successorship, considering Ken is literally a baby at that point? I don't know. I don't have an answer. It seems weird that, you know, all these guys got sent overseas to train when they all had brothers. Anyway, let's move on to the next segment. So near the end of the storyline, Ken actually finds Rao's son, Ryu, because I guess Rao had a son too, and then he plans to make this kid the next successor of Hokuto Shinken. So they travel around and the kid learns how to stand up for himself and believe in his father's blood and whatnot, but not once does Ken actually ever train him in anything. There's all these flashbacks of Ken training throughout the manga, so we know how difficult it's supposed to be, but he basically does nothing for Ryu. I have no clue how this kid is supposed to be the next successor of the art when he doesn't learn any of it. And I mean, the overall storyline isn't bad, but it's strange. And then Ken just leaves when he thinks Ryu is ready. So I guess Ryu is the successor, but without any real training. Like maybe Ken was just training him like outside of the borders of each page. Who knows? And it's also hard to say exactly how long these guys traveled together because time in this manga is very strange. It's all very fever dreamy. Okay, so this is the final part of the storyline, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I kind of hate it, but it's stupid, which makes it funny to talk about. But if there's a place to put out an argument that the manga should have ended off when the final fight with Rao was done, this would be where you would point to. Remember how Rin got fat fingered into loving the next person she sees? Well, when she opens her eyes, Bat is that person. So she falls in love with him. On their wedding day, Bat has a meltdown and is all like, "Your love for me is false," because Rin loved Kenshiro. So Bat uses his fist to wipe her memory again. Then there's a flashback to Yuria dying and she tells Ken to be with Rin too. So let's talk this one through. Kenshiro was a grown-ass man when he met Rin, who was 8 years old. And like the ages aren't perfect, but at the lowest estimate, Ken is like 20. Again, time in this manga is like, it's like being in a casino, right? You couldn't tell me, like I wouldn't have guessed that Ken is 10 years older after the time skip, other than the fact that we were told it was 10 years. So best case scenario, Rin is just over 18 and Ken is like 30 something now. And obviously we all get it. It's the 80s. It's Japan. It's a post-apocalypse, but also, you know, Yuck. That all being said, Ken does try to do the right thing. He wants Bat and Rin to be together, which makes sense because, you know, they've known each other for 10 years. They've been really close. But no, we gotta go through more memory bullshit. So Ken's scars start glowing because of reasons it's not explained. Again, no sense. And Ken loses his memory too. So now Ken doesn't know who he is and Rin doesn't know who she is. And when they all meet up, Bat is like, oh, this is perfect. I can just leave these two memory challenge people together and they'll be in love. My guy, that is not how it works. Meanwhile, some older villain that I honestly don't remember is searching for Kenshiro, but he's blind after his initial fight with Ken from 10 years ago, so Bat gives himself the same scars on his chest as Ken, so he can take Ken's place, fight this blind dude, and keep Ken and Rin safe. Obviously, he fails to kill this old enemy, he gets captured and starts getting tortured, and Bat realizes that if he screams in pain, the blind guy will realize he's not Ken, because Ken would never do that, so he just sucks it up and lets this guy slowly kill him. Oh, and Mamiya decides to die with him for reasons. It just, none of it really makes that much sense. But then, Ken does show up. I don't know where he found them, and the blind dude grabs Ken and just starts headbutting him over and over again. So Ken's head starts bleeding, but the headbutts fix his memory. So just know, if you get a concussion and you forget what happened that day, all you have to do is get another concussion and it'll fix you. And down the line, you definitely won't kill and eat your entire family. But then, all of a sudden, Rin just gets her memories back too. No headbutts required. It's such a we need to end this now move, and it's 100% the worst writing and plot of the entire manga. Apparently Bat's gentle eyes, you know, the eyes Rin had been seeing every day for a million years at this point, brought back her memories. And now Bat is dying and makes Ken promise to be with Rin, and Ken accepts, and they all lay Bat to rest, and Rin and Ken are walking away, and Rin finally realizes that she can't leave Bat's side, so after all that promising to be together, she fucks off to Bat's dead corpse. But guess what? Bat's alive. Yeah. He's alive because Kenshiro hit those sensu bean channeling points, because Hokuto Shinken can fucking do anything, bro. And after all of that, Ken walks off alone into the wasteland. The end. No, actually, like, for real though, it's the end this time. And considering everything that was in at least the first half of Fist of the North Star, this is like one of the worst canon endings I think I've seen in a manga for a long time. Like, I even tried to laugh, but like I couldn't laugh. It was just kind of one of those like, damn, that was bad. My advice would be, like, if you want to, you can go past the halfway mark, but stop when Ken leaves Ryu. Let that be the true ending, and don't put yourself through this will they, won't they stuff that just goes on and on. But I gotta say, through all of this, Fist of the North Star is a fantastic manga. It's an amazing story. It's something that I kind of grew up with. You know, friends of mine had movies. We could rent some of the movies from the store, and I watched it, and it was just one of my favorites because it was always so ridiculous, watching these people explode into, you know, pools of blood and guts. It was awesome. And yeah, sometimes it makes no sense, sometimes it contradicts itself hard, but the theming is strong and the emotions are really on point when they need to be. The tears, man, they feel real, you know what I'm saying? The art is absolutely amazing. That's like one of the most, like, it's incredible. You can see why it's a genre defining manga. So enjoy the gore, the violence, the big sad boy energy, in the entire experience. It's still absolutely worth your time, and everything that I didn't talk about is just as good as the stuff that I did talk about. Part of what we do here is we try to curate good shows for people who haven't watched them. And if you haven't experienced Fist of the North Star, honestly, we really didn't spoil it for you. So go out, experience, enjoy life. If you want to support our channel, please check out our Patreon. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.